Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hello, guys. It is our first podcast of the new year. We get to be the first release, so that's pretty exciting. It's just Danica and I today. I mean, I say just, but we're missing Steven and his color commentary, but it's a girls' day today. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, I mean, I guess New Year's resolutions is like the easiest way to describe it, but it sounds like both of us encourage it to be framed differently, right?
Yeah.
I guess like a resolution would imply resolve, right?
Right.
And like making plans for moving forward, which is what we want people to do.
Right.
But I think the hard thing about resolutions is, like the ones I really don't like are the I'm not going to do this, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we even talked about that. They can kind of reflect back on, I think it was during like the holidays, what to do. And instead of putting it as restriction, like don't lead with restriction, but lead with intention. And that really helps because a lot of the times when we have these resolutions, it's I'm going to not do this. I'm going to give up this, which can be fantastic. Like there's a lot that can be fantastic when you hold space for that. But I think that there's this negative tone to it almost of don't do that, only do this. You can only act like this. Like there's this such restriction that I feel it often backfires.
Well, that and like if you set up a rule that says, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to eat that. I'm not allowed to have this in my life anymore. As soon as you do like slip up or like you do allow that thing to come into your life, then it's this feeling of like, oh shit, I messed everything up. Like I did it and now I'm wrong. Versus if we come at it from a place of what we want to add or what we want to do more of, if we didn't get to it, then it's like, okay, well, there's tomorrow, instead of it being like, oh God, well, now I ruined my streak or whatever, and that kind of thing. And so I think getting away from that mindset is what can be really helpful.
I absolutely agree. And I also think that like there's New Year's resolutions I find to be, I think that they're great. I think all the time we should be able to reflect and make improvements on ourselves, right? To be able to grow, to be able to embrace change. And the reality is starting on a Monday, having a new year, like those, whether we like it or not, because we could also argue like, well, good God, start on a Tuesday or start now. Like we could argue that, but there's something about it that helps to kind of ignite a little bit of motivation, whether that's externally and then it trickles into your internal motivation. So for the people who are like, well, I don't make resolutions or I think New Year's resolutions are ridiculous. Well, there is a place for them. And I find that it is important to be able to reflect on our choices and behaviors and then take note of them and say, is there something that I could tweak a little bit? Could I change it to better serve me and align with like a person that like my future self, when I think of a whole new year that's coming into the mix, do I want to make any changes? Do I want to keep some things? Do I want to let go of some things? And to frame it in a way that's more maybe positively driven too, instead of it's not a shameful act. Like I think sometimes New Year's resolutions can be, I hated this thing that I did to myself, so I'm going to let this go. Like shame that I did this, so I'm going to do better. And it's a negative thing. Instead, it should just be a reflection. Like, how did my year go? Because the reality is we're starting a new year. How did your year go?
Right. And like you had said, with I think it's important to look back and see what went right. What are the things I'm proud that I worked on and that I put focus into? And then I had seen a post today from like another coach where they were talking about looking at even like the things that you did well. So it's like the team that I work with for my ultra training and stuff like that. And they were like, if you accomplished something big and you look back on it, like, and you're proud of that, but are there still pieces that maybe you could have done a little bit better? Like, did you put everything there? Or, and if you did, fantastic. Like the vibe could be just let's carry that. Or, is there something that maybe you could have tweaked just a little bit to see that get a little bit better? Where can we focus to kind of carry that energy in? And I think that helps a lot with avoiding the negativity of like, because the reality is setting goals of saying like I don't like who I was in 2024, and so today on Tuesday December 31st I'm saying screw that, and tomorrow on Wednesday January 1st that's it. I'm a new person. I'm a new version of myself. I'm going to be completely different. That's not super realistic. Like
Yeah.
being able to pull that off is probably not going to happen. And so I think looking for the positive things there and then still looking at that in a lens of could that have been even better? Where can I lift that? Or how can I carry that into something that maybe I didn't like how I did something for that? Like for myself, I tackled my ultra training in a different way than I've ever tackled any of my like marathon training. And this marathon that I did last year was my fourth one. And so it's gotten to a place where like I'm comfortable with that distance. I've been doing the same course. I know what to expect on the course. And if I really look at it, there's probably a bit of like, because I know it so well, it's not that I've gotten like lazy with it, but maybe I didn't give it the same respect that I did something that was completely unknown. Where for the unknown, it was like, I better plan for like all possible scenarios and like make sure this doesn't happen and all of that. And so I want to bring like the ultra energy that I had into like that everything that I try and do this year. Even if it's just like one of the things I want to put more focus into is my lifting. Like I spent all last year very much focused on running and everything like that. And this year I want to try and give them both equal respect, which means that one thing is going to have to pull back and one thing is
Right.
going to have to lift up a little. And, try and just have it where I want to pour that, and it's not always going to be possible, but I do want to try and give more respect and more focus to all of the things I say that are important to me, which I recognize means that there's probably going to have to be some things that no longer are listed as important, right? Because we'll see that a lot too, where people will say, like, oh, well, this goal is the only thing that matters. This is my main thing and stuff. But then we don't give it main character energy. And so trying to bring that into it a little bit more is what I want to try and do with this year. Because I feel like for me, last year was the first one where, so with Claire, our youngest, we stopped nursing at the end of November of 23. And
Yeah.
so 24 was like my first year back to like, my body is just mine. I'm not sharing
Yeah.
with anybody. I get to do things that I want to do. And I've officially feel normal again.
Yeah.
Like, and she's going to be 3 this March, and I'm officially back to where like things don't feel as, it doesn't feel like I'm building back into stuff. I can now build past what was my previous normal.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to try and just expand what that means and like push what that normal boundary is.
Yeah. What are things in 2024 that challenged you, but you can reflect back now and now you can see it as an opportunity for growth?
So it seems so simple, but going into the mountains by myself
Mm.
was a big thing for me. And it's funny because parenting kids who are like Riker and Cora are officially at that age where they're really good at trying to do like risk mitigation. Like they're old enough to where they can be like, this is scary or this is bad and things like that and try to hold themselves back from things. And we're trying to get them to not do that as much. Like we want them to be smart, but like with some stuff, like don't be so nervous about things. And I was always like a very, very nervous person with that kind of stuff and would not do things where like I'd talk myself out of whether or not I really needed to go off on a mountain trail for 5 hours completely alone with no cell service, not knowing what I was going to come in contact with. And so February will be 6 years that we've lived here in Colorado, and I didn't bother going out, even like the lake that's 15 minutes from our house. That trail made me nervous to be like 7 miles from the starting point and be alone. And like, what if I ran into someone? What if I ran into an animal? What if I fell and got hurt or something like that? And so I just wouldn't. And with doing the ultra, I knew I was going to have to climb a mountain, and there's no better way. I could have trained for it only on a treadmill. There's people who do that, but I had access to all of this
God.
terrain, and so why not? And I mean, I would be scared pretty much every time I would go. And there was plenty of times I'd call Vic on a trail after I'd find a pile of like bear poop or even just see a sign that said mountain lions were in the area. And I'd be like, is this a terrible idea? Should I turn around and come home?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, no, like just go. And that was really scary to me. Just go do it.
Yeah.
And so starting to do more of that and like being able to stand at the top of a mountain by myself and be like, I'm the person who got me here. This was big and scary. It was hard. I've stepped out into literally unknown territory for myself. And doing that was really big for me. And so I'm excited to try and do more stuff like that because like traveling alone is something I had opportunities to do when I was younger and I didn't do because it sounded too scary. And I look back on that and I'm like, shit, that could have been so fun, you know? And so trying to find more space for things like that, I'm hoping to do. What about you?
Oh boy, what did I change in? Hmm. I would probably say maybe like communication. I find even though I find myself to be, this might sound conceited, but I find myself to be a very good communicator. And that's my job too. Like I have to effectively communicate in order to have it be receptive and then have there be an impact. And what I found was that I was missing that skill in personal relationships. But I was hesitant to use that skill in personal relationships, whether it's friends or family members, my husband, even though I knew I was really good at it, the carrying that skill set over and then being able to use it, I guess, effectively, I found it to be difficult. Like I just found that to be challenging for me. I also think that like I'm very sharp with my tongue. People don't always, well, I guess our listeners have seen me be sharp with my tongue. But I find that emotional regulation became very difficult in my personal space and maybe that's a mom thing too. Like maybe like having toddlers running around. And I think that being able to realize like timeout in order for me to feel like this is going to work, like the home environment's going to work, me going places, like going to visit people, going to see my in-laws, going to see family, like I need to be able to have that emotional regulation pretty solid for me to make the best out of each scenario. And that in turn would help with my communication. So I did a great job with that when it came to like mindset coaching or because I have to, like with work, you have to do that. You can't be like, you know what, today's not the day. Like you can't do that. So that was like a big, I guess maybe it was my own aha moment. Like I am actually in control, more control. And I think everybody realizes this, or maybe they don't realize this. We're in more control than we think we are. And even if like we have a certain, if we're frustrated or we get anxious or we get like really agitated with things, we are in control of those emotions as opposed to those emotions controlling us. And when those emotions control us, then they go into our behaviors or our actions, our behaviors, our words. And 9 times out of 10, that's not good. Like it doesn't lead to good things. So that was like a big thing. And it's so multi-layered too. Like being able to emotionally regulate myself for myself, like realizing that me being a yelling parent doesn't serve me well either. Like I'm sweaty, I'm like overheated, I don't feel good. Like I it carries into so many or trickles into so many different areas of life. So that was probably 2024 and something that I can it also helped me in like I said in other areas like my lifts became better, my workouts became better. Like if I was getting frustrated at the girls while doing a workout because they're home with me, it didn't serve my workout well.
Right.
So and that was something I really just learned, oh, I actually have control over this whole emotional regulation thing that I teach all my clients. Like I could probably do this to me too.
You know what I realized too, though, and I was thinking about it recently with my clients, because this time of year naturally slows down a little bit for us, right? Like
Yeah.
holidays and stuff. And so I feel like a lot of the clients that we carry through like these seasons and stuff can be people that maybe we've worked with like
Yeah.
longer, like we've had the ability to form more of a relationship. And I was thinking about it, like how grateful I am for this crew that I'm working with right now, because this year I feel like I have been more honest with them in check-ins, even when I am showing up on a day that's harder. Like my clients are the people who see me if I'm sick, who on the days where
Yeah.
I just cannot put on makeup, but I want to show up for them, where like, it's just it's a hard day. Like I've had one I mean like last week, I don't even remember what it was. There was something and I was my client Sam, her check-in was like the next one and for whatever reason I had been crying. And I started my video to her and I was like, don't mind me. Like, this is what happened. This is why I was upset. I'm fine now, but like, I just want to talk to you about your life and stuff. And then after that, I was like, wow, like how lucky I am to have these like people who do like they trust me to be there for them and to have things to say, but they see me too, like in my moments where I'm like, hey, this is why like it's hard for me. And so like with the communication piece, I think because 23 was just a lot with Claire and the fact that like I had never nursed that long and
Yeah.
then also had, going back to 2023, my roster had gotten its biggest like then. And that was when I took over the challenge and more with the podcast and like things like that. So it was just a lot. And
Yeah.
24 was kind of my year of working to figure all of that out more and
Yeah.
balance it.
Yeah.
And I found the same thing too that you had said, where like I would look at it like, well, with my work, I have to show up a certain way, or they're not going to want me, or they're not going to trust me, and I'm going to get in trouble. But then realized, and by get in trouble, not have as many clients or not have as much to do,
Right.
um, but not giving our relationships at home or our relationship with ourselves that same respect is not going to make it easier to turn
Right.
around and show up for them, right?
Right.
Because if we're, in silly little tiffs with our spouse because we're drained. And like that's the hard part. And then it
Yeah.
feels so shitty to try and explain, but like it can be really hard where I want to start a video for my clients where I'm smiling, I'm chipper, I'm excited for them, I'm trying to do a positive spin on everything and that kind of stuff. At the end of the day of doing those videos and everything, it can just feel like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and you kind of, your battery runs low for being able to continue doing that. But it's not fair for me to be like, well, I gave all of my positivity to my clients today. I don't have any left for you, you know?
Right.
And so trying to figure that out was a lot of what I spent 24 on with the communication. And what was really nice was that I got better at being able to tell my husband, like, here's where I'm struggling with this. And then we narrowed down what helps me with that. And so, like, and we've talked a lot, like, he in the, you know, I'm sure there are people who will hear this and think it's like wrong somehow, but like he will tell me, Christina, go for a run or like go for a walk. You
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
get outside and move because it's like a reset button for me.
Right.
And I'm so lucky that he prioritized me being able to disappear for majority of the weekends. I'd be like, I got shit to do for my goals. So
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah,
the kids. I got to go disappear on a mountain. You're not going
yeah.
to be able to call me. Don't worry about it. And, but like not beating myself up for taking that time either, because that was one of the
Right.
things that was scary. It wasn't just disappearing onto the mountain, but also I would spend the whole time with like the guilt of, oh, this is so shitty of me to ask him to do that and stuff. And so then balancing, like he picked up fly fishing with our good friend this year. So it would be like one day of the week I would disappear into the mountains, and then there'd be another day of the week where he would disappear into the mountains and
Yeah.
try and figure that out. And so I'm excited for 25 to try and like continue to push those limits, but then build on keeping that like working for us and not having it stray into a selfish place because having goals can be inherently selfish. But I think like we have a responsibility as people who have a lot of relationships, not just in our home, but like to have our coaching relationships work out, those have to have a certain level of depth to them. And so just continuing to kind of work on that.
Yeah. And to allow, I've worked with a lot of clients, I feel like this past year, being able to allow space for ourselves and not automatically think that that's selfish, like being able to say, I can make time for me. Like I would always ask, well, tell me about all the time that you make for everybody else. And then I'd be like, okay, so if we can carve out all that time for everybody else around you, you're telling me that like you're not as important. And that is something I feel maybe because the dialogue was so heavy in that I was like, this is something I could totally reflect on for myself and be able to say, I need to carve out that time for me too, or this is how I can help myself to better regulate my emotions, or when my cup is really, really low, I can go fill my cup through these activities or by doing this and being able to apply that and not just say it. And that helps with our goals too. Like I feel that a lot of people, when they do make these goals, they should be able to say to themselves, and also, I need to be able to have the emotional and physical energy in order to achieve these goals or in order to bring better whatever it is into 2025. They should be able to say, there has to be something that's going to charge me up too in order for me to reach these goals. Like you can't just like go out of nowhere. There has to be something. When motivation is great, and I think that, or willpower, quote unquote, which actually does exist. And I love that. I know you saw that post in the Facebook group.
Just say, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that there's actually a part in our brain that literally grows when we do something that we don't want to do. And I love that.
Oh, so
But
Danica, what she's mentioned, there's been a lot of talk in our current Facebook group that we have for the Slay the Holidays. The goal of that group was just to keep people going and like be supportive through a like between two challenges and not have a goal of change per se, but just keep going. And so they've been talking a lot about motivation. And there was the one, was it your client,
it was
Julie?
my client. Yeah. And I
Right.
gave her burpees and she was like, F off, Danica. Like, she's
I
like,
think I was like the first comment where I was like, demonic. Like, that is so mean, Danica.
yeah, she was like so mad at me. And then at the same time, I knew there was like this, like, I'm so mad at you, but also thank you. Yeah.
There is something about just doing something that you don't want to, just for the sake of doing it. And like
Yeah.
whether or not like are like burpees inherently like a life and physique altering exercise that everybody should have to do? No, not really.
No.
They suck.
Yeah.
They just suck. And it's like, so my thing I tell clients to do is go on cold walks, right? And that's something that I personally hate doing. And they'll say like, oh, well, it's too dark or it's too cold or the timing's wrong. And I'm like, I don't care. Go do it. And
Right.
like
Right.
the point is whether it's a burpee or it's a walk when the temperature's wrong or whatever, it's doing something that you don't necessarily love that's going to add to your day to help build that resilience piece.
Right.
And that's why I like the focus on willpower, like you said, over motivation, because a lot of
Yeah.
people will wait for that motivation piece. And like the longer I've been coaching and the more I've worked with people, the more I despise the word and the concept of motivation because it's so fleeting and I see it as a waste of time to like wait,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, you also have to, I do feel that we talk about like purpose and why. I do think that a lot of the times it's important for us to like shift the purpose to or expand the purpose. I was talking to a client about this with like we were discussing what she was able to do in 2024 and bring with her into 2025. And then we were talking about like setting goals. And a lot of the times I do feel that we get too tunnel vision or too detail oriented in the goal setting. Like, I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to lose 10 inches. I want to hit my macros to a T. Like it's very, very detailed. And we were talking together that if there was just expansion of goals or expansion of the why or the purpose, like I want to move my body. I want to increase my flexibility. I want to be able to have better cardio endurance, like cardiovascular strength. If we expand that, then from there, you can, once you establish that big, like, I want to move my body daily, right? Like, move my body. Then you can become more detail oriented. But I don't think it works all the time the other way. Like, if you go detail oriented first, you don't have that right foundation initially, but if you expand it a little bit and just say, I want to move my body, and then you start to build that foundation, then you realize, like, oh, now I can move my body daily because I've been consistently doing this. So, what if I tweaked it a little bit and I said that I wanted to lift 2 times a week doing legs, 2 times a week doing upper body? Like, then you can become more carve it out a little bit more. And she was like, goals should be like that. Like, I want to be able to effectively communicate with my husband. Cool. In order to do that, like if I can just like start communication and start talking, then maybe it goes into, I would like to be more empathetic. What does that look like? I would like to make sure that I'm a better listener. So I'm going to not talk until a full sentence is done. But right? Like then you can carve it out a little bit more. And then it's more attainable. Like I feel like people like they are able to reach their goals by we've talked about foundational stuff, but setting goals you should expand a little bit more and realize that like it should be a bigger thing that helps you to stay focused, and then you can dial it down a little bit more. People might not want to hear that because it's easier to say, I want to lose 10 pounds.
Well, it goes back to like the SMART thing, right? Where
Yeah.
everybody would say if you're going to set goals, it needs to be, what is it? So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic. I
Is it
can't
real?
remember what was T?
Specific, maintainable. What's A?
Atta
Attainable.
Attainable, I thought.
Specific, measurable,
Measurable. Yeah, let's see.
attainable.
Google to the rescue. Let's see. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Or someone else put track your progress for the T. Time bound. So, and I feel like, yes, that can be nice. So I've been asking clients to consider 3, 6, and 12-month goals.
Yeah.
And the goal with that was like, I do think it's nice to have something short and more time bound and specific. I think that can be nice. But like you mentioned, something like 10 pounds, which is all too often the goal, right? Whether or not somebody realistically needs to lose 10 pounds, but they think that's like the goal. If they don't hit that number, can be like such a downer. And
Right.
so again, it goes back to like the more time spent coaching and the more time talking to more people, I do kind of pull away from the very specific goals and like to encourage more of what you're saying, where it's like, what if we just continue to roll that snowball and just to
Right.
build on consistency? Because as annoying as it is for people to hear it, it really does take that consistent effort where it's not necessarily bound to something. I want to say not necessarily measurable in the sense of like inches lost or pounds lost or something. But what if instead the measure was how often you did it or how consistent you were
Right.
or like that side of things? Because
Yeah.
I find more success for my clients and for myself if I look at it that way as opposed to the measure of change. Well, I don't know.
No, I
Measure of
think
change.
too, it would be what percentage are you giving to that goal? So which ties into consistency, or when people kind of send their check-ins and they have adherence to plan, I
Mhm.
want to know, well, what percentage? If you were at like a 20% and like you gave 20% and that was it, well, that's not good. Like that's
Right.
not very consistent. That's not good. But say one week, like say you've been consistently above 85 or 90%. That's pretty good. If we reflect and say, prior to this, you were at zero. So,
Right.
like, that's pretty good when we look at it from like a percentage standpoint. And you may not have hit target numbers 100%, but that consistency over an extended period of time is what we're looking at to help us to kind of push the needle a little bit in the direction that we're striving for, right? And this is obviously all individually like dependent. If you have like a stage goal, then like we probably should be a little more dialed in. But if we're just trying to move that needle like slowly and steadily and to be able to see long lasting change that we can like really maintain, then I think looking at percentage wise helps us. It doesn't feel so, I don't know, like that, like pass fail or all or nothing. That's just not a good area to live in emotionally and mentally and physically. It's not. So get the fuck out of that area and go into a space where you can look at the big picture and say, percentage wise, how am I doing? Like, can I give myself an 80%? That's pretty good. Cool. Maybe could we give 90% next time?
Exactly.
And just go up to there.
Yeah. And as silly as it sounds, by holding yourself to that 8 or 9 out of 10 when it comes to stuff, really, and like being more dialed in and giving yourself less freedom throughout the week with that, does over time give us much more to work with and more freedom of choices and things when it comes time to make change, right?
Right.
Because like if I'm working with somebody and they're consistently, so like on our check-ins, our clients will know this, but like when people do their check-ins, we have like an adherence scale where they can mark themselves. And if somebody, like I have one client who lately we've been seeing consistent progress as she checks in, and the consistent progress has been a change of maybe zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.3 of a pound of fat loss without it completely taking over her life. Which means that when she checks in, she'll tell me, like, I have hit my carb and protein goal 5 out of the last 7 days, but I only hit my fat target 3 out of the last 7 days. But the week prior, she didn't hit the fats at all.
Right.
And her carbs have been crazy. And so we were like dialing in each of those. And I mean, she homeschools. She's got at least 4 kids. I think she might have 5. And work and like a whole bunch of stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't be super realistic for me to ask her right now to be 100% dialed in with things because that was causing a lot of stress with
Yeah.
stuff. And so we created just like a space with it where it was like, okay, well, you marked yourself a 3 or a 4. Can we go for like a 6 this week and bump things that way? And now we're getting to a place where she's coming in more at like, she is confident personally rating herself at like a 7 or an 8. And that's like an easy, not easy, but that's like a non-stressful zone for her,
Yeah.
right? Where she can say like, yes, I am putting effort into things. Yes, I am focused on making sure she's getting her protein in and getting the workouts in and stuff like that. But it's also not getting her to a place where like for some people it can become so anxiety ridden with trying to make everything balance out that then they'll pull back completely. And so
Yeah.
we've been trying to avoid that place and then being able to just ask for a hint more. And I know it can be really exciting to be like, oh well, it's the new year, it's whatever. Or if you're listening to this in June a year from now, if you're starting something fresh, to be like, all right, I am all in 100% effort. And then, you mess up, that can be soul crushing
Yeah.
and be really disappointing. But I think that if we set those boundaries of just, did we try a bit harder than we did last week? And then did we maintain that for a while? And that can help us really get to a place. And again, this goes back to lifestyle, not like if you're doing a show or something like
Right.
that. We're at 10 out of 10 effort in that situation. I think that can just be much more digestible and then lead to long-term success because that's one of the other things for myself this year. I spent a solid 6 months not tracking, and that is probably the first time in 15 years that I've done that,
Mhm.
like and not had my body lose its mind. I didn't have like
Yeah.
things fluctuate. I didn't have like, oh God, what's happening and like stuff like that. It was the first time like being able to stay like even keeled. And so then that was something I had to challenge myself with, not opening up my fitness pal for like the numeric feedback of yes, you're doing the right thing still, and being able to just know like, okay, well, this is what my meals need to look like. This is how I need to set things up for workouts. And then I went through, like, we talk about the post show blues and stuff like that with clients, but like, that's what happened with me after the race in October. I'm very much somebody who needs that carrot dangling in front of
Yeah.
me. I need a finish line, something I'm working for. And so for the last 2 months, I've been in this like vacuum of like, well, what am I doing with my life as I like figure out what my goal was? And I usually pull back on coaching in those situations because it just, if I'm not going to give a coach 100%, I won't sign up like in that situation. And so I knew I wanted like flexibility and then just maintaining that for myself so that I knew when I was ready to dive back into something, I'd be ready to give it my all, but have maintained that base. And so that was like new territory a little
Yeah.
bit where I didn't pull all the way back. In previous years, what I've done is once like I always run the race in May. And then I'll usually end up, because I just hate extreme weather. So during the summer, I would usually not run as much because it's so stinking hot. And then during the winter, I would pull back and not run as much. And then I would have to do like the rebuild to get
Yeah.
things back to a good place. And this year I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to
Right.
maintain like a certain level of fitness and work on not having a carrot, like the ultra kind of popped up out of nowhere, like that idea for stuff that wasn't something I went into the year planning to want to tackle. Um, and so, I mean, it's been fun because I think it gave me a different perspective, like when working with clients and stuff like that, to kind of be in like a learning zone, like
Yeah. Yeah.
again, or like having things feel fresh and unknown a little bit, and then be
Yeah.
able to share that and like, okay, well, this is how I'm working through it. Like, do these strategies work for you and things like that?
Yeah. That's such a good, I guess, like point or perspective you bring up too, because goals don't always have to be like dial things in more. They
Right.
can also be dial it out. And that was something that, I mean, my last show was 3 years ago now, and obviously I tracked macros then. And then I teetered off of it a little bit with tracking. And then I've literally I like started back up, and I think I actually called you and I was like, I don't think this is for me though. Like, I don't think that this is necessarily for me. I know it's really cool to get to a place, and I hope that people can see that they can get to this place where you just can know when you have a feeling of like, you know what, I didn't really hit a lot of fats today. Or without tracking, without like an app telling you that. Like you can be like, oh, I'm a little bit under in protein today. Maybe I should just bump up that serving. And you can eyeball it, or you just know nutritionally what your body needs and how you can consistently stay like that. And your digestion kind of can communicate with you, your energy can communicate with you, your strength can communicate. Like to be, when people say I'd like to be more in tune to my body, like that's exactly it. And I don't, like every now and then I'll reflect back and go and track. And if I want to push myself and be like, ooh, how is my body going to do if I add in a little bit more fat? Let's measure that for a little bit. But then it lasts like a week, and then I know what I have to do. Like then I know what that looks like and how that feels. And that feels really good. Like that feels awesome to be, and like you said, to just be cruising in your body, like to just be like, oh, nothing's changing. Like I am the same person that I like. Obviously, I think that I hope that I've like maybe just maintained the muscle mass. Um, but my body's been the same for the past 2 years. Like there's really not too much fluctuation. And so I don't have to be dependent on that tool. That tool became immersed like inside of me. And what a cool tool to have that I can now use when I want to. And it's trusting ourselves with those tools now instead of trusting an app with those tools. And I mean, even body weight, I would be able to like just like feel myself and be like, yep, feels like this. And that's pretty cool. Like to be able to know that. I always want for my clients to be able to get to that space where it's cool to reflect, like it's cool to have that data and to like sometimes I'll go in, I'll tell them if they really want to test themselves, backtrack, like go through a whole day, and then the next day, backtrack that day and see what you did. And then you'd be like, oh, I actually am hitting my macros pretty well consistently without even like measuring things or like I'm pretty consistent and I can trust myself to do that. And that's where like if people wanted to dial things down as a goal, maybe to be able to be more mindful, or people can use the word intuitive, mindful, just free balling it, whatever you want to use. But that's another goal for I would challenge people to do, to trust themselves a little bit more as opposed to just relying on a food scale and an app, if that's like the place that they're at.
Yeah, yeah. And that was something that, I mean, years ago, if like when I was deep in competing and reshaping really, like constantly focused on trying to build more muscle or trying to lose more body fat. And like where that was the main focus, I would say like that was probably the hardest time for me to have anything that I didn't diligently track because it would feel like an opportunity to be like naughty, like to have something like I
Yeah.
normally have. And then of
Yeah.
course it would lead to, you know, maybe some water retention or like something like that the next
Right.
day that would be like, oh my God, what have I done? And then you go
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
into like, I have to be super rigid. I have to do that. And so I exactly what you said. I have done the same thing with me and with my clients where it can be nice to go back and track things afterwards. And so there's no longer like there's nothing you can do about it. It's already
That's
happened.
already done.
Just
Yeah.
you know, like you wake up and you weigh in and you're the exact same. And then I would go and like track things. And there were times, especially like over this summer, where I was trying to make sure I was eating enough, like for all
Yeah.
of the training and
Yep.
everything. But it still was scary sometimes when I was hitting like 2,800 calories a day. And I'd be like, oh my God, like I have not
Yeah.
eaten much while I
Yeah.
was like super pregnant. And here I am like eating all of this food. And so it would be scary during the day where like if I was tracking all day and I would see myself getting to like 400 or like 450 carbs, there'd be a part of me that would want to be like, you don't need that. And would try to like come in with like the diet mindset of you
Yeah.
shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so I had to give myself that the tool of doing it like the opposite way so that I
Yeah.
didn't hold myself back from stuff. And what was interesting about it was so I have tried to do fat loss phases since having Claire. Um, numerous times. And I
Mhm.
literally would never make it past like 24 hours. As soon as I would, like, and it sounds so silly, but I mean, it wasn't super important to me. I think
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
right? Like, I, so as soon as I would get uncomfortable, I'd be like, this is stupid. I don't want to do it. And so then I
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think that got me to probably my healthiest place with stuff that I didn't push it or try to make it more aggressive or try to make it harder and things like that. And I would just say, fine, fuck it, I'm not going to. Because now I've gotten to a place where I started tracking again in
Mhm.
December and have tried to see kind of what I could get away with, I guess,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
the best way of putting it, and like see change happen without being too serious. And like I haven't asked anybody to coach me with it because I cannot confidently put a time frame on how long I'm going to
Yeah.
be willing to do this. And so I don't need to bring
Yeah.
anybody else into it, you know? And I've been able to see change happen pretty easily. And
Yeah.
be more flexible with it too. Like today, I was pleasantly surprised after taking, I had hit majority of my macros that I had planned out yesterday. And then I took our oldest daughter to go see Wicked last night.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me, she's never been to a movie theater before. Because
Uh,
she turned 5 in 2020.
oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
so she's like one of those kids who really like her world has been so different. Like it didn't even dawn
Yeah.
on me how different her world has been because of when COVID hit and like the shutdowns and everything. And so
Yeah.
the kid had never been to a movie theater before. And so she wanted everything when we went
Yeah. Yeah.
yesterday. And normally I'd hold her back a little bit, but I was like, go for it, babe. Get
Have
whatever you
fun.
want. The cheapest way, which it was still $24, was to get this gigantic, like bigger than my head, large bucket of popcorn, which then I let her do the butter on, and she absolutely
Okay.
crushed it. And then we got candy and sodas, and then I didn't know AMC theaters have bars. And so
Yeah.
I got an IPA. And so we're sitting there watching the movie, and, you know, she's offering me popcorn and she's offering me candy and stuff. And she is not like my family is used to me being like, oh, no, mom's not having that today. And they don't think it's weird. But I was like, yep, sure. And went ahead and enjoyed everything. and my body didn't move at all. And like,
Yeah.
that was one of the things that then and even with the fat loss phase, like I was able to maintain where I've been. And it made me want to talk about that in our current group. And I'm doing the Facebook Live this Friday.
Okay.
I kind of want to like um give them a prompt a little bit for like questions or like the discussion with it, where it took many many years in confidence building in this lifestyle and stuff like that to be able to go into having unexpected snacks or having unexpected drinks or things that we didn't plan for, and being a very like type A, no, I have to do things the way I said I was going to do them kind of person, having learned to just do that and A, not go overboard, and B, not beat myself up for it. And
Right.
like that becomes a skill that we have to learn with things. And
Yes.
because I've spent all of that time working on that stuff, my body and my mind have been able to be more successful more often at just shaking that stuff off,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
feeling the need to try to make up for it the next day, or
Right.
being like, oh, how could I have done that? I should have said no to everything and
Yeah.
stuff. Because I mean, that was my intention. I went into it thinking like, I'm going to drink my giant Diet Coke. I'll go home and have my bowl of Greek yogurt and
Yeah.
and I'll be fine. And I would have been fine. But I haven't had movie theater popcorn in
Right.
a really long time. And so I
Yes.
was like,
Yeah.
we're spending $100 to be here. I'm gonna have some fucking popcorn. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good, it does take time. I think that it really does take time to understand the inner workings of our bodies too. Like, okay, where does my body where's a good kind of area for my body to be macro wise? And that takes tracking. That takes consistently tracking to understand your digestion. How much does my body move? Like, that does take time to be very strategic and have a little more data, but then to be able to have that understanding and know how to implement it. Everyone who's been tracking forever knows what 4 ounces of chicken looks like. Like, they know what a half a cup of rice looks like. We all know what it looks like. An ounce of almonds. Like, we can eyeball a lot of this stuff, but to be able to practice that. And then also, I do strongly believe, because this is probably, well, no, I've had many periods of being just like not free, like mindful, but free. Like, if I want to have something, then I have something. I think what ends up happening is letting go of the, oh shit, like if I do this, then, and then our body will immediately perceive that as a threat and will feel it and show it. Like, and so with people set themselves up like that, of, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out, it's going to be horrible, and I'm going to gain a bunch of weight, and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. That is telling your body, like, you better start freaking out. You better start not digesting this and not having fun with this. And you better start holding on to water. And then that ends up happening. But if you go into it with, okay, I'm going to have a great time, like, and it's going to be fine. We're going to see what happens. And that's it. Like, and then that's it. Then our body is like, oh, everyone's chilling. Like, intestines, you're good. Like, heart, you're good. Like, everyone's good here. Cool. Let's do this. And then you end up waking up totally fine. Or you'll have that mindset of, yeah, this makes sense. I just had a big sushi meal and doused it with a bunch of soy sauce or whatever it may be, right? You'll be like, yeah, it makes sense that I would be up like a half a pound. I have a little bit of water retention and this goes away. Like, there's no emergency
yeah,
or like feeling of emergency or feeling of a threat. And that is something that I think a lot of people, as they reflect on their goals, to know where your dial is and to know, maybe, do I need to turn down the dial a little bit? Have what I've been doing, because I get nervous when people are like, I've been doing this, so let's turn up the dial. I'm
yeah,
like, maybe that's the one thing that you don't need to do.
yeah.
Maybe it's being able to be a little bit more graceful with yourself and your body. And I bet you're gonna feel better. The results are probably gonna come, and you're probably gonna feel better along the way.
Yes. And I think a big part of that has been working the mindset part of things and not trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
having to recognize that, right?
Uh-huh.
Because for years, I only focused on trying to reshape and only focused on, and like even when it gets to like the conversations of like bulking and like cutting and like stuff
Yeah.
like that, and when I first got into this lifestyle, yes, during like cuts or preps and stuff, I could get to a place that was like, oh my God, I can't believe my body could be like this. And during those times would be like very excited about it, right? But had to be very, very dialed in. And then as soon as I would go into any other phase, I lacked the respect for that phase that it required to make it as easy. And so then I see pictures now of myself where I know it was like, 6 months after the Arnold, or
Mhm.
it was like, I mean, my last show was in 2018, which I did not feel like was that long ago. And now I'm like, oh my God, that was almost 7 years ago. Like afterwards, thinking that I had gotten, fluffy or whatever it was. And I look at myself and I'm like, God, I look super jacked and like looked great. But even then had so much stress tied up in it and stuff.
Right.
And I feel like now what's been crazy is that for a good portion of the day, I have outlines of like my obliques and like a couple abs.
Hmm.
I can be more free with stuff. And I honestly think about exercise, well, not exercise, I think about that a lot, but I think about food and
Hmm.
stuff significantly less. I
Yeah.
don't fuck around with supplements. I am not stressed out about making sure I'm taking a GDA before we go out to brunch, or I'm doing like,
Right.
before was so fucking dialed in and it was
Yeah.
everything and all the things. And I was so unhappy a vast majority of the year with my
Yeah.
body, you know?
And probably anxious, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
because it's a all consuming, it's all consuming, period. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's because I had more of the mindset of like on and off seasons.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And what has gotten me super excited, as I've gotten older, because the way I have since then lost both of my grandparents and watched their decline, and the way that their physicality and the way they treated themselves and stuff like that had big impacts on why they died so early. I have watched other people around me and the way that their abilities and things like that have changed over time. And there's something about, like, I'll be 38 in March, and like now that I'm done having babies and stuff, because there's something about like pregnancy and um breastfeeding and stuff where it gets easier to treat your body a certain way because you're like, oh, it's not just for me, it's for the kids
Yeah. Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. Where like I got very aware of, okay, but where do I want to be in my 40s? Do I want to be the person who is like, oh my God, why is perimenopause kicking my ass? And why do I have this random fat gain? And why can't I sleep? And like all that kind of stuff. Where now I know better, okay, last night I had an IPA. It was not fucking worth it because my sleep was absolute trash. And I
Yeah.
figured
Yeah.
out that yes, one drink is
It does.
literally enough to be detrimental for like 3 days of sleep, which means my mood is going to be shit. My workout's going to be shit, which goes back to my mood being even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now there's all the information coming out about like your brain health and like blood flow to your brain if you mess around with stuff. I don't have time for that. I have
Yeah.
cognitive decline and like that kind of stuff in my family
Yeah.
is already potentially going to come for me. And like I've started to realize now that we're like officially middle-aged, right? Which is like crazy.
I
But
know.
like we're there. And this is where you
Yeah.
do the work to try and make sure that we're going to be like awesome active grandmas like decades from now.
Right.
And in order to be that, that isn't to say that I don't have aesthetic goals and stuff like that. I'm currently in a fat loss phase. I still want to see those things happen, but this has been easier and more fun for me because instead of thinking of an on and off phase, I'm just thinking about every single day. How do I want to feel? And
Yeah.
throughout the year, how do I want to look and how do I want to feel and perform and stuff like that. And I think that attacking it with a goal of I always want to be a certain way has helped it, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't want to always be stressed out. I don't want to always be
Right.
painting or things like that. And so it's helped get it into a place where now that I am backtracking and like having to deal with hunger and stuff like that, it's like, oh, okay. Like it's not as stressful and it's made it easier. And so that's something that I just really want people to try and take into setting these goals and planning things out for 25 is like don't don't look at it as a sprint. Like, even if it's a fat loss phase, say you're committing to 16 weeks or like something like that of a fat loss phase, it's you're not actually just committing to that because you're also committing to the 16 to 32 weeks of a reverse diet that you need to get out of that. And you don't want to fuck that up because we don't want to have to immediately go into a I fucked everything up fat loss phase,
Okay.
you know? And so you really do have to look at it as like, and this goes for competitors too. Like if you're blowing up in your off season and now we have to, do lifestyle cuts to try to get
Yeah.
to a place and stuff. And that's not to say that lifestyle cuts are bad. I feel like the way I just worded that, if we're doing the oh shit cuts, right?
Right.
And
Right.
those are happening routinely, then maybe we need to address the way that we're acting throughout the year and the choices that we're making with stuff. And
Right.
if we just keep that commitment and consistency, it makes it so much easier to not feel like you constantly need to be on this roller coaster and like
Yeah.
cruising to where you want to be.
Right. Yeah. I think that comes with that zooming out, like being
Right.
able to zoom out more. And people should, when they do make their goals, think about it also in long-term senses, right? Like, is this going to help me long term, like longevity wise? Is this going to help me, right? If I achieve these goals, because there's always a then what, like, right? So you can have those goals that are like by February, I'm going to be here. That's wonderful. But then what? Like all the things that you're learning now to achieve that goal for February, can you still apply them and are they still benefiting? Can you just stack up all the tools that you're learning? And those are things that you can take into your life 10, 20 years from now. Like that would be the goal, right? Everything that Christina and I have learned from doing cut phases and competitions and like trial and error and going through the mindset yuck and being able to navigate that is we've learned a bunch of stuff in order to take with us. Like that stuff doesn't just go away. Like that stuff is actually benefiting us now and will help us 10 years from now too. It will also really help us as we go through. I'm turning 40 in a week, less than a week, on the 7th. I'm turning.
Dun,
How did
dun,
that
dun.
happen? Oh my
I
God.
love that for you. I remember being afraid of 30 or like the idea that I should have been afraid of 30 because so many people
Oh,
and that
yeah.
really I wasn't too much and I kept
I
waiting
do.
for it.
It's not that I do feel a certain way. But I also, you're right, because there was this like, I don't know, maybe it's like an unspoken thing, or maybe it was spoken that like, oh, by 40, this is what like you look like, sound like, and act like. And I'm
Right.
like, not me at all. Like, I don't, that's not me. So I guess this is what 40 is like. But I say that because the things that we have learned and like the tools that we have developed along the way are things that we can apply into perimenopause and into like postmenopause and being able to go through each season of a woman's life and for men too, like you age, like you don't just not age, right? So I think it's important to set goals or intentions for each year or each week that are going to kind of piggyback off of each other to help you with longevity, like a long, healthy life. And maybe it's setting goals for your last decade of life. And then if you can set those goals in your last decade of life, whatever that may be for anybody, right? Like, so I would hope that my last decade is between 85 and 95. That'd be fantastic for me. When I think of those goals, then I can say, okay, if I want to be able to lift up a carry-on bag and put it overhead when I'm that age, then I need to be able to lift this amount of weight. Then I need to be able to do this, do this, do this, do this, right? Then you can kind of set the tone for your goals. And those goals also help you to achieve your one month goal or whatever goal, right? So people should consider that whether your goal is physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, whatever it is it going to help set you up for a better future as well?
Yes. I love that so much because that's what like kind of where I've been with my goal setting lately of like thinking about that last decade without knowing that's exactly what I've been thinking
Yeah.
of. And I love that of like figuring out, for me, when you said that before you said the carry on, and I mean, that's a genius one, but being able to pick up even from a seated position, your great grandchild,
Yeah.
or grandchild,
Yeah.
or whatever, and put them in your lap on your own,
Or being able to like tie your own shoe, like bend down, tie your shoe, or being able to carry my own groceries. Like I want to be able to pick both of them up and whatever it is and still carry my own groceries without there being a struggle. Or another huge thing I think is important is being able to walk into a space with really good posture, like to always have an upright posture and to like kind of take charge with my presence. And that I think is something we don't, but that takes me lifting. Like it takes me lifting weights. It takes me being flexible. It takes me making sure that I'm mobile, that I like have the flexibility that I can to be able to like lift myself or arch my back or so though I think people should consider those things because what you're doing now will lead you that way or won't. So like maybe it's reflecting on the things that we're doing and will those things help you if you don't want heart disease or if you don't want type 2 diabetes or are the choices that you're making now, what path are they leading you to? And that's just a great reflection. And sometimes it is making sure that you're a little hard on yourself because you may not see that now. But even when you said like the alcohol, if people are like heavily drinking now, those effects may not be visible right now, but are they adding up? Like, are they adding up to something that is like fatty liver disease or is white brain matter deteriorating in their brain? Like,
calcification like in your
right.
heart and things like that we don't even know, like wouldn't realize. Like the more I learn about it and things and the more information that's coming out, like there is just no beneficial amount. There is
Yeah.
no safe
Yeah.
amount. One
Yeah.
way or another, it's not good, you know?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
I have like, I enjoy the taste and stuff like that
Same.
of certain
Yep.
things, but over the years, I've also narrowed down, like, no, I'm not going to have a glass of like, so Vic loves, oh my God, why can't I think of Chianti red wine?
Oh,
I
yeah. Yeah.
I don't. Like I
So
just don't.
dry.
And so if he opens it, like previously, like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I would like drink it. And I'm like, no, like there's just nothing I get out of that. And so no, thank you. And then now it's leading to a place where like I'm not bold enough to say like, oh, I'm going to be 100% sober and like not have anything. But I am much more critical of, is
Yeah.
this worth it? Do
Well,
I
you
want?
have a conscious choice. You have more of a conscious
Mhm.
choice with what you're doing, right? You know what's going to happen. Like I will be drinking tonight and I know my HRV will be horrible. My sleep will be horrible. I definitely know that my bowels are not going to be the same. I am consciously making that decision, knowing the repercussions, and also knowing, like, okay, how can I, if I'm consciously making that choice, am I okay with it? Number one, could I tweak my decision? Number two, and if I am okay with it and I'm going to make that decision, how can I best support my body? So, like, maybe I drink with electrolytes, or maybe I make sure like I stop at 8 p.m. and like I'm hydrating. I'm making sure I'm hydrated. I wake up in the morning and I make sure I get AG1 or whatever my supplement is in the morning. But maybe that's how I can like better support the conscious decision that I know is going to bring consequences.
Yeah. Oh, I was so mad when I woke up last night at like 1 o'clock in the morning and I was so hot. And this is
Oh,
really,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
had 2 beers. And like, I mean, IPAs are like higher on the alcohol level than, if I had had like a light beer or something. But like for me, those are not worth it. I might as well just drink a Diet Coke if I'm going to drink a Coors Light. Like I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to
Mhm.
spend the calories on that. And so if I'm going to drink, I'm going to have something I enjoy. But I woke up and I was like, God damn it. Why did I do this on
Oh, yeah.
December 30th when I know tomorrow is New Year's Eve? And like we bought a bottle of Prosecco to have, which is like on my short list. I like IPAs. I like sparkling wine and I like margaritas. I'm not going to waste my time with anything outside of that short list. I just don't enjoy them as much.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I don't want 2 nights in a
Two
row
nights.
like that, and I already did this, like shit. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, my intention for tonight, the way I look at it is I know I'm going to work out tomorrow. I know it's going to happen because I'm just the kind of person who is going to
Yeah.
want to start the year off on a certain foot.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to be grumpy if it goes wrong because my HRV today, it's normally at about 100 and I was at a fucking 40. My resting heart rate has averaged at like 57, which for me is appalling. And I recognize for most
No,
people,
because that's like your normal is like 32.
yeah, right. Like my normal is between like 38 and 42 is like almost dead, right? Um when I prep, I remember one time I woke up, like Vic woke up and I was sitting on the couch and I was like, am I gonna die in my sleep? Because my resting heart rate got to 29 once while I was prepping. And I was like, my heart's beating less than once every other second. Like,
Oh my gosh.
is this like encroaching on problematic
Yeah,
territory?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so when it gets, I was looking at like the chart on my Whoop, and they were like, for athletic women your age, a normal is between like 50 and 60. And I was like, what? Like it seemed so crazy to me. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, okay, territory, but for my body, it's just used to all this cardio. And so I'm like, I don't know. Like now my pride in the machine that I've built, right? And
Yeah.
that's what's changed, I think, is that I used to just go off of ab checks and like things like that, right? On
Mhm.
whether or not I was successful the day prior. And now, over the years, I've really gotten to a place where I'm proud of the machine that I have put work into fine tuning, and
Yeah.
it has rewarded me by being roughly the same size for a really long time. Like,
Yeah.
the muscle that shows off and like things like that. And the aesthetic benefits are really cool, but I do get pretty grumpy if my machine is not working well
Your
because I
machine's
gave
not
it
working.
terrible fuel.
Yeah. There was such an interesting thing. I have to go back and try to find it. But one of my clients said, as she was, I just love speaking with her. She's such a awesome, very mindful, very like deep client. But she said, in 2024, I realized that I respect my body so much more for what it can provide me and what it can do. It may not be this isn't my preference and how it looks, but that is just a preference. And that doesn't mean that my body is not capable of providing so many other things. It's just not my preference in this season. And I was like, oh, that is so interesting to like what a cool way to conceptualize that. Like, it's just not my preference. I'm okay with it. I'm total like I love what it can provide me. It's just not my preference. Okay. Yeah.
And you can alter that is what's so
And you
fun.
can alter that. Yeah. Yeah. I
I
love
think,
that.
I mean, I hope what people get, I always get nervous because like when we have these conversations that because we're at a place where maybe we're not desiring or seeking out huge change or reshaping for ourselves. I hope like I always get worried I'm not going to
That we
come.
can't relate
Yes.
or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're always, I think it's important to also say that we're striving, you and I are still striving to be better in some capacity or another.
Right.
And we had to start somewhere. Like it wasn't like we just came out of the womb and we're like, well, we're going to be fitness coaches and like we already know everything and we're good to go. That
Yeah.
wasn't the case. Like we had to start somewhere. And if we didn't start in that personal growth space, we probably wouldn't be coaches. Like, and we probably wouldn't be good coaches, right? Like we had to be able to go through our own journey as well and continue to. This hasn't ended. Like I still have aesthetic goals. I still have personal growth goals. Like I will always have those goals. But it's just in a different space or a different capacity than other goals than other people's goals. If you like took away our if someone just said, "Do you have a goal? Do you have a goal? Do you have a goal?" Like we're still on the same playing field. Like
Right.
we all want to improve in some capacity or another. And it doesn't have to be the same exact improvement.
Right. That's why I'm kind of excited about my little experiment that I'm running right now because my parameters for continuing it are it being fun and being able to find discomfort and sit in it, but then also prioritize the things that I do enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I haven't decided if I actually do want to mess around with anything as serious as like a prep, because I know at some point I'd have to get quite serious and probably not. I'd probably have to not run, which I find really annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to make a shift. And that's like I think that that alone if people like I could understand that that alone can be a challenge, like a challenge in itself, like a goal in itself to be able to you would have to switch into a different state of mind in order to say like this goal is worth it so much that I'm okay with sacrificing running.
Right. And so that's why the way I'm roughly looking at, and I mean, really, the next 6 months, right? Like that's the funny thing about having kids in sports is that we're about to enter a horrifically busy season of cheer, where literally we saw my in-laws this last weekend,
Mhm.
and I made the mistake of saying out loud, we'll come up next weekend, this coming one, because that's the last weekend we will be able to see you in your home until Memorial Day. Now that I think about it. And then, you know what I realized while we were still there and they were all excited and making plans? I have already made cheer plans for this weekend. And so actually,
What?
we have cheer every single weekend until the end of May, from here on out. And like, but that's like what the kids and I enjoy and like things like that. But you know, so I have to do long range planning when it comes to stuff. And so then I was thinking about my own with things and like the way I'm looking at the little fat loss phase I'm in right now, which I mean, did my body is still, even though I was eating nearly 3,000 calories a day like 4 months ago and able to maintain weight and stuff like that, I've still had to get a hint more aggressive than I thought I was going to have to. And like my body's diet memory is still uh well versed. And it's like It's still, I had to push a little bit harder than I thought I would have to. And so what's funny, I got that stomach virus at the beginning of December. 0 out of 10 stars for norovirus. Do not recommend. Not a good way to lose weight. But what was, I dropped like 7 pounds in the matter of like a week and then went back to eating normally and it stuck around. Things didn't go up. And so that's when like part of me was like, huh, I'd be curious to see what happened if I messed around from here. Would things move if I did decrease stuff? And it's been working out. And so my plan for right now is to carry this train on until it's either no longer fun or I get to a place where maybe I can actually level it up and turn it into something different. And at that point, I will be closer to the races I want to do, but have not signed up for yet. And I might have to shift gears with things. And so I've already started considering, like, okay, well, maybe I don't make running as intense or as taxing because that's normally what happens. I don't want to lift because I'm putting too much energy there. So then I lift like twice a week and I'm just doing like maintenance lifts. I want to get a little bit more intense with stuff. I went and got blood work done. I'm kind of like lining everything up to
Yeah.
decide which one like calls me the most. But then
Right.
there's also points of the day where I'm like, do I have to run a marathon this year? Like, God damn, those runs take so fucking long.
They do.
I'm like, I don't know that I want to go on a 3-hour run. That sounds long. And so, but it's kind of fun to just be in a place of, because I've spent all of those years with the up and the down and the focus and stuff, to feel very just like choose your adventure is like what it
Yeah.
feels like. I
Yeah.
don't know where 2025 is going to take me with stuff.
Yeah.
Like we have this crazy new division. I'm very excited to see it play out, see where things go there. Maybe I want to be a part of it. I also look at my heels and I'm like, man, I really suck at walking in heels. And I'd have to start doing posing practice.
I know a great posing coach.
So I obviously, Danica is who she's talking about. But I'm the worst with posing with someone I know because I get so embarrassed and like,
But then they can be harder on you. I found that my best posing coaches was actually someone that I was their posing coach initially, and then they got their IFBB pro card, and then she became my posing coach, and I've never had such a harsh posing session because she was like, I know you, and I'm not gonna candy coat anything. I was like, okay. And it worked amazingly. Yeah.
but all of that stuff too, like, motherhood comes back to star in like so many aspects of life, right? Where like I'm asking, the kids are going to a gigantic, gigantic competition in February that's going to require them to level up in a big way over the next couple of
Okay.
months. And like I think routinely, like, how dare I ask them to step outside of comfort zones or to do something scary or something
Yeah.
that a lot of the parts of them is saying, like, I don't know if I don't do the same thing, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm excited for 25. I sent out an inquiry to see about doing horseback riding lessons.
Oh,
And I
awesome.
might start doing that, but then I'm like, but should I do jujitsu? Like, because as a runner,
Your
not on the
adventure. Yeah.
roads, like, I want to be able to fight somebody off if God forbid anything like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm just very like, I don't know. I'm gonna ride this train for now, see where
I
it goes.
love that.
If it
Yeah.
stops being fun, I'll find something new.
Yeah. I love that. I hope everybody kind of is able to choose something fun, right? Like have it be fun for 2025. And that doesn't mean it's not going to be challenging. It should also bring challenge because that's where you find growth. Um, and typically really good success, but have it be fun too. Yeah.
Commit to it and then reap the rewards of it. And then if you don't
Yeah.
like it, don't do it again.
Pivot.
Something else.
Yeah. Find something else.
I love it. Well, New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Next time we talk, it'll be a whole new year.
I
That's crazy.
know.
Another one. And I can't believe you're turning 40 like any day.
I know. That's even more crazy.
That's
I have
exciting.
7 days, 7 days left.
One more week. I feel like we'll have to dive into something with that soon. We've kind of danced around the perimenopause conversation.
Oh, we should talk about that.
Oh my God, the way I wanted to smack you and Steven upside the head when I can't remember, it was like 2 weeks ago. I was talking about something when I was getting my blood work done, and you both dropped the word perimenopause at me, and you were like, well, when that starts, like, and I was like, oh, fuck both of you. I'm not there. Don't put that evil on me.
We should
I know.
talk about it though. I don't think that we should, yeah, that should be, I'm okay with talking about it on my 40th. That's fine.
Well, I mean, because it's something that I think I've chose to try to ignore and be like, no, I'm not like I'm willing to recognize I'm about to be 38, but that's one thing where I'm like, no, but really, like my body is kind of like maybe
Potentially, kind of.
kind of there. So, yeah, we'll have to figure out disclaimer like that we're not doctors
Yeah.
and like
We're just females who have female parts that also experience a lot of things.
yeah, yeah. Or maybe we'll have to hunt down somebody to come chat with us who is more of a
Yeah,
professional.
yeah.
Be there. So, okay, guys. Well, I hope that by the time you hear this, your new year is off to a good start and you've chosen a fun adventure. And that your HRV didn't end up too low from your
Yeah.
cocktails.
And you're
And
able to make sure to hydrate.
what are you drinking tonight? Do you know? Or are you just going to roll with it?
No, definitely drinking tequila. And
Yes. Committing.
tequila and I do get prime drinks. Like I get and I'll have LMNT. So
Nice.
I'll mix it with like stuff that also hydrates me.
I tell you, I swear this is the last thing. We were on a meeting with like an admin meeting and
Mhm.
Misty was on it and I was she was laughing at me because I was like, is it inappropriate if for a recipe for the challenge group, I share my boozy protein hot chocolate, which like I recognize there are people out there who'd be like, oh, well, you've had alcohol and so protein's pointless and like all of those kinds of things. But one of my favorite thing years ago to do was I would make like a hot chocolate with chocolate protein powder
Uh-huh.
and I would add in like extra cocoa powder and stuff and make it super good. But then I would add like a shot of like either Bailey's or
Yeah.
Kahlua. And she was laughing at me. Like that was so
Just
crazy.
like, no. Oh, I'm always like, you should make a cocktail that also you're getting some hydration in there. Why not?
Hey, why not? Like maybe it's not like the most effective process, but I feel better about it.
Totally.
Putting
Yeah.
effort in.
That will be my drink of choice, though.
Love
Yeah.
it. All right. Well, have a lovely new year, friends,
You
and we will
too,
talk
everybody.